Welcome to the St. Canard Files, the Darkwing Duck podcast. I'm your host, Mike Russo, and we have a special episode. Okay, I'm not going to do that the entire time. That's not going to happen. That would be real punishment for our listeners. But I am back. It's been a while. Obviously, some housekeeping quick. You know, me and Will wanted to take breaks. Initially, I thought we were going to take one long one together, but I think it made more sense that we will take a break. I take a break. So Will and Stan did a few comic episodes. Now Will's taking his break. So I'm going to do a few, and then eventually me and Will be back. So I'm here for part one of basically a 3-part series of the Fluffy Trilogy. And obviously, I think you guys should have predicted this by now. My co-host tonight is Stan Lunn. Welcome back again, Stan.
Thank you. Yep, you guys are stuck with me for a little longer.
You are the comic guy. It's just the easiest way to do this. You have all the comics. I think you had everything even before Will was collecting the comics, right?
Well, not everything. There's plenty of Disney adventures I don't have, but I'm fairly resourceful in tracking down the things I don't have to read.
Do you have all the Darkwing stuff though?
No, actually, I don't.
Oh, there's a few stories you don't have?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you have plenty more than I do. You have a lot more than me. I found some of my old Disney adventures and Colossal Comics in storage last week, and I was able to save some of that stuff.
I saw that.
So it's nice to have those again, including a comic scene. It's a magazine from the 90s issue that came out when Darkwing Duck first premiered, all about it. So that was cool to get a hold of, too. So it's nice to get some of the stuff back from my childhood. It's always cool to find things in storage you forgot you had. But like I said, today we're talking about the first part of the quote-unquote Fluffy Trilogy that ran on Disney Adventures, right, Stan?
Yep.
All 3 parts were from Disney Adventures. Nothing on Marvel, right?
Nothing on Marvel, no.
Okay, but before we get started with that, since it's been a while since I've talked to you, Stan, how was Ghostbusters-Afterlife?
It was incredible. I think it's my favorite of the 3 Ghostbusters main films at this point.
Okay. Well, without spoiling anything, what'd you like about it?
I love the story. I love the jokes. I love, the heart that it had, the effects. It was just about the perfect movie. The only thing
Awesome.
I'd have added into it is more Ghostbusters 2 references.
They didn't have many of those, did they?
Not many, no.
Well, I kind of understand it. Oh, because you told me you liked the second one more than the first one, don't you?
Yep.
Okay. I don't remember the second one being all that popular. I think I've only seen it once, so I'm not really one to talk. But I do like the original. For someone who likes the original just fine, but isn't big on modern Hollywood films, would you recommend it?
I would highly recommend it.
All right, so I'm going to have to check that out at some point. It looks good.
Make sure you stay through the credits for the 2 after credit scenes.
Well, that's pretty par for the course with Hollywood films these days. You got to stay through the credits.
It is par for the course, but I can't tell you how many times I go to a movie and see half the theater just get up and leave when the credits start.
They don't know. They're missing out. Would you say it's good for kids?
Yeah, I'd say it's good for kids.
All right. I mean, my daughter hasn't seen the first one yet. I feel like 80s level films are a bit touchy, with kids. I don't know what my daughter's ready for with that kind of stuff. But I want to give this one a chance. At some point, I'll watch it. I might not go to a theater for it, but I'll definitely check it out when it's streaming somewhere. Is it?
Is it streaming yet?
No, just theaters, right?
Just theaters at the moment. Yeah.
You know, I'm glad theaters are coming back and movies are just in theaters now. It was nice to have things streaming same day as while it lasted, but nice to see things are kind of getting back to normal, huh?
Yeah.
So before we get into the story, we have a couple of news things to talk about. We got a new Darkwing product that just was revealed this past week. Not something I'm gonna buy, not something I think you told me you're gonna buy, but what is it?
It's a mini backpack from Loungefly.
I do have to say this thing really looks cool. Like I'm not
It
gonna lie.
does.
I mean, it's Darkwing's face, it's Darkwing's outfit. His buttons are like little actual buttons on the backpack. It looks cool.
I'm pretty sure there's a thunderquack hanging from the zipper, if I remember
Yeah, a
right.
little metal thunderquack. You're absolutely right with that one, which is cool too. Couple of drawbacks though. How much does this thing cost?
I've heard $85.
Uh, that's about right for Loungefly though. Their stuff isn't cheap.
Yeah, but even at 85, if it was a full size backpack,
Yeah.
it might have really taken off more with us, but it's a mini backpack.
Yeah, so the price is already kind of up there, and it's not something even the size. If it was like a full size backpack, I'd like maybe consider it, but I think mini backpack that kind of price is a bit much. I mean, I guess it's cool to buy it to have if you want like all the Darkwing merchandise, but it's just not practical for me, you know?
Yeah.
I'd rather put that money towards something I can either display or use. It's cool though. I'm sure people are gonna buy it. It's a neat product. It's nice that Darkwing stuff just keeps coming out. Like it's
Yeah.
nice. He's having a good year. I'd say for his 30th, he's gotten a bunch of good stuff. We're still waiting on the Q figures though. What the heck?
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed they haven't come out yet.
I mean, I know there's a shipping delay, like all over the country. Like things are just, it's bad. But should I feel bad about being impatient? Maybe a little bit, but well, it is what it is. Unfortunately, we lost a voice actor just a few days ago. At least when we're recording this. This is dropping like a week from this record, but we lost Will Ryan at 72. So he lived a pretty long life, but he had, I think it was stomach cancer, correct?
I I think so.
Um, could you happen to name some of the voices he did? Like even if we could just narrow it down for Disney.
Unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with his work. He didn't do anything Darkwing related.
Yeah, he wasn't on Darkwing. Among the things he did do, he was Willie the Giant on Mickey's Christmas Carol. He was Pete on DuckTales, all those versions of Pete. Um, he was Tigger and Rabbit on Welcome to Pooh Corner. That was that show in the 80s on Disney Channel where the characters were wearing creepy costumes. He was also Goofy and Scrooge on Sport Goofy and Soccer Mania. Have you seen that?
No, but I've heard things about it.
You should check it out. It's interesting how it came out the same year as DuckTales, but it wasn't like meant to be a pilot for it. It was its own thing entirely. It's worth checking out. It's really cool.
Aren't some of the designs like similar?
Yeah, Scrooge is about the same. The nephews are voiced by Russi Taylor. The Beagle Boys are in it. It's not exactly like the 87 DuckTales, but it has some similarities. He was also some of the ogres on Gummy Bears as well. And he worked with Katie Lee on the Adventures in Odyssey show. So I know she was pretty upset when he passed away as well. But rest in peace to Will Ryan, a voice acting legend. It always hurts to lose one. I mean, the numbers are getting smaller. It's really a shame.
Yeah.
But it's rest in peace, Will Ryan. You gave us some cool characters, and when I watch Mickey's Christmas Carol in a few weeks, I will think of you whenever I see Willie play the Ghost of Christmas Present. You've seen Mickey's Christmas Carol, right?
I'm pretty sure I've seen it once.
It's on Disney Plus, so you can easily see it again if you want to see it. It's really good. It's he's good as the Giant. It was the first Alan Young as Scrooge, at least on film. So that's the last time Clarence Nash was Donald Duck too. So let's
Alright.
get to this comic. It's called the Kitty Kat Kaper, and it was published in Disney Adventures, I believe, the July 1992 issue.
Yep.
And who was the writer on this one?
The writer was Doug Gray.
And who drew it?
David Schwartz.
So these guys have teamed up before on a Darkwing comic. One we haven't talked about, Turnabout is Foul Play. I think that was one of the earliest Darkwing comics.
I believe, wasn't that the first Darkwing comic?
It was either that or Let's Get Fiscal, right?
One of those two, yeah.
They both have steel beaks, so they kind of blur together in my mind. So Doug Gray, he wrote for some various Disney comics throughout the 90s, and David Schwartz did art for many of them too. Schwartz actually was a storyboard artist starting in the late 80s, and he's still active today. A lot of Disney stuff, as a matter of fact. Many episodes of Darkwing.
Yeah,
as
including some of the all-time greats.
Like which ones?
Like Just Us Justice Ducks, Haunting of Mr. Banana Brain, Going Nowhere Fast. Those are a few that I can think of right off the top.
I've looked at a lot of Darkwing scripts over the years, but I would love to see more storyboards. The only one I ever saw complete was Beauty and the Beat. Jim Peterson showed it to me. I would love to see more Darkwing storyboards just to see how they match up to the show. And I'd love to see the ones he did. As far as writing this comic, I think Doug Gray is fine. His writing is okay. Darkwing sounds like himself. Launchpad does too. There's a couple of moments where a few of the characters say things that kind of weird, but it's not all that bad. Schwartz's art style is different for Darkwing Duck. Very different. I know as a kid it was bothered me a bit. I've grown to like it, but it has its odd quirks. What do you think of the art in this story?
It's a little odd. It works for the most part, but there are a couple times where you're like, okay, why'd they go that direction?
Yeah, characters are a bit overdrawn. I'd say baggy clothes. Oddly, all the characters in many, many panels have irises in their eyes.
Yeah, that's the strangest bit.
I know once in a while, like maybe in a Disney Australia episode, they'd give irises in the characters' eyes for emphasis, but they didn't have them all the time.
Right.
But they have them all the time in this. But the art's different. It's appealing. You just kind of have. It's like John Blair Moore's art in like Darkly Dawns the Duck and Justice Ducks comics. At first, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's kind of sloppy. I'm not really into that. But the more you look at it, the more it really grows on you.
Yeah.
So I like it. I think his art in the Turnabout is Foul Play was a little bit more consistent and a bit more restrained. It's a lot sillier here, but I think that works with Darkwing Duck, right?
Yeah.
And before we start, this comic has the distinction of being redone for the Joe Books Darkwing Duck comics. It was basically retold. Most of it's the same. We're not going to go into detail now, or else we'll have nothing to talk about when we actually review that comic. But yeah, the most interesting thing to me, starting off right off the bat, is the title. Kitty Kat Kaper. In Disney Adventures, all three words started with K. In the Joe Books comics, only Kitty was written with a K. I'm going to leave it up to our listeners' imagination on why they might have changed that. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw it to you, Stan. How does the story start?
Well, first, before getting into that, I did want to mention that the original story was reprinted once.
Where?
In the Darkwing Duck Returns Capes and Capers graphic novel.
Oh, see, I never owned that. I the only one I was really aware of was the Justice Ducks one. I never knew it was in the other one. So there you go. Learn something new. See, I'm not as well versed in comics as I am about the show. Like, I'm a savant with the show, but the comics, there's a lot I still have to learn, you know?
Yeah.
So how does the story start?
So it starts in the St. Canard Research Center. Darkwing and Launchpad have responded to a call from help from Jay Gander.
He's on the horns of a dilemma, which I think he said in the show before.
I think so.
So we actually meet a new character here. And for the life of me, I don't know why this character isn't Cerebellum.
I'm gonna guess because Cerebellum probably wouldn't have been quite as reckless as this guy.
I don't know. She created a ray that made people's heads explode.
Good point.
So who is this guy?
So this guy is Dr. Metal.
What's going on? What did he create? What was his experiment?
He has been experimenting on an orange cat named Fluffy.
We don't find out what his experiment was just yet, do we?
Not quite yet, and of course Darkwing ends up leaving before he can explain. But an interesting thing about Fluffy, he wasn't always meant to be orange.
Really?
The writer meant for Fluffy to be a black and white cat because he felt, and probably rightly so, that there were too many orange cats in comics media.
Garfield, Heathcliff. Yeah, I get you. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder why he ended up orange. Did you ever find out?
I believe that it was just a miscoloring thing.
Oh, I guess in a way it looks better on the comics page. The character reads a bit better.
True.
So there's a ransom note that Darkwing's given, and Darkwing thinks it's in code, but it's just misspelled, of course, because that's Darkwing for you.
Very badly misspelled.
Very, very, very badly, yeah. Darkwing rushes out the door, and Dr. Metal's like, gee, you think I should have explained to Darkwing what the experiments were? Maybe you should have. That would have solved a lot of problems here for Darkwing.
Yeah.
So what happens next? Darkwing has a plan.
So he leaves a satchel of money in the garbage can and disguises himself as a red hot seller in order to keep an eye on whoever comes to take the money.
Do they ever mention there's actually money in the satchel? Did I miss something?
I don't think they mention that there is any in there. I'm hoping they didn't put anything in there, but it's Darkwing, so.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, what's in the satchel? I mean, it must be money. What else could it be? So he's a hot dog vendor.
Yep.
A kid comes up. It's a monkey. There really aren't monkeys in Darkwing Duck, but we got monkeys here.
Maybe he came from wherever Apes of Wrath was happening.
I guess it isn't as bad as sleep ducking when all the characters are humans, huh?
True.
Yikes. So this kid shows up asking for a hot dog, and Darkwing plops it right in his hands, burning the kid. But because of the commotion, they totally miss the fact that this cat, it must be Fluffy, snatches the satchel and runs off. They don't even see it.
Nope.
So my favorite joke in this story is when the kid's father shows up, and he's like, "Is you the guy what scorched me, kid?" And Darkwing's like, "No spricken the English, comrade."
Yeah.
And then I love the father's line. He punches Darkwing and says, "Yous is a vicious and contemptible beast." It's funny because this big gorilla guy has some very good language there, punching Darkwing out and throwing him into a garbage can.
Yep, but it's a good thing he did knock him into the garbage can because DW makes a discovery.
What does he find?
That the satchel is missing.
Yep, it is missing, but luckily he finds a clue in the garbage.
Yep.
So this is half the story is basically Darkwing taking the wrong turn.
Yep.
So what does he find?
He finds a note divvying up prices for sandwiches for supervillains.
A lot of supervillains.
Yes, 7 of them.
Yeah, so on this basically this note divvying up. Yeah, they can't do math in their head. They can't add up their tally for the sandwiches they've ordered. So we have Quackerjack, Liquidator, Megavolt, Bushroo, Tuscanini, Moriarty, and Steelbeak. And the funny thing is, if you look really closely, Tuscanini ordered the most stuff.
Yeah.
Like times 6, it says, I believe. But whatever he ordered, it's times 6. But I guess that makes sense. It's Tuscanini. A walrus has got to eat, right?
Well, not only that, but he's also used to expensive things, being a film director.
Unless his penguins are in the next room and he's feeding them too.
Possibly.
So, luckily, Darkwing deduces that the villains are right next door in the hotel.
Yep.
And Darkwing kicks the door down. He does get an entrance line. I am the superintendent who comes to repair your attitude. I love that. That's a pretty good one. So what are all the supervillains doing?
They're watching the Miss Corn Fritters Pageant on pay-per-view.
Yeah, pay-per-view. What a relic of the 90s.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all watching it. I will point out, not to spoil much, that some of these villains do not appear in the Joe Books version of the story. One of them specifically, sorry, Will, is Quackerjack. He does not show up in that one. I don't believe Steelbeak does either, right?
I don't think so.
I think they replaced them with Jambalaya Jake.
And someone else. But Jambalaya Jake is one of them that they replace them with.
Maybe the other one is Gumbo. I mean, why have Jake and no Gumbo? Unless I'm wrong. But we'll find out when we review that comic, won't we?
Yeah.
So Darkwing pays in and watches it. $10 a head. And they sit around watching it. Which is, I think this is very cool and very true to the show. How Darkwing would stop what he's doing to watch something with these guys.
Yeah.
And it ends, and then the villains go after Darkwing.
Yep.
Tuscanini has a line that I just can't picture Kenneth Mars saying. He says, "Now we shall take care of you, you hateful little good boy." And I just can't picture the character saying that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by Doug Gray's writing is Darkwing. He gets Darkwing perfectly. The villains don't come off as well. They had to expand on this scene for the Joe Books version of it. So Megavolt goes after Darkwing, and Launchpad catches him, but gets shocked himself. All the villains pile on Launchpad, and then Liquidator gets a pretty decent scene. He gets singled out, and Darkwing throws a sponge at him.
Yep. Defeats him with the quicker picker-upper.
He even says it, too. And so Darkwing takes the sponge, throws it at Tuscanini. He slips, falls on the other villains. And then Darkwing throws the wet sponge at Megavolt and shocks him.
Yep.
So he beats, 7 villains without breaking a sweat, basically.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Though I will point out something here that there's a line that's a little confusing if you don't know the context.
What is it?
Where I forget which character it was, but they tell Launchpad, "Well, you didn't say anything about Tuscanini's puns."
Megavolt says it.
Yeah, and Tuscanini hadn't made any puns.
Yeah, Megavolt says, "Don't worry, you won't know what hit you." And Launchpad says, "Stop, please. Puns can kill." And then Megavolt says that line you mentioned. Yeah, which Tuscanini doesn't say anything. It doesn't make sense.
Not in the Disney Adventures printed version of this, no.
Do they fix it in the Capes and Capers reprint?
Not there either.
They fix it in the Joe Books version, right?
They may have fixed it there, but specifically, the writer Doug Gray has actually gone back and tinkered with these stories. He has his own blog where he's got these versions, and he puts the pun back in for that.
What, do you happen to remember the pun?
That I don't.
Okay, I'll have to go check that one out. I didn't know about this. That's pretty cool. Good information, Stan. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't take notes down on. It's referred to as the director's cut, but I figured since we're focusing on the printed version,
Yeah, of course, because not many people are even gonna know where to find that. So we should, when this episode drops, we should link to that
Yeah.
so people can see his director's cut of it for sure. So the villains are arrested, and Darkwing spots Fluffy with the satchel. They go after him, and Fluffy gets away in a house.
Yep.
And what happens next, Stan?
Well, they chase Fluffy into the house, and he reveals himself to them.
Well, at first you don't see Fluffy in the chair. He starts
No.
talking, and Darkwing's like, "It's the Invisible Man! Come all the way from England to tangle with yours truly!"
Darkwing, what an ego.
So Fluffy reveals himself, as well as the fact that he can talk.
Yep.
Fluffy has a lisp.
A very heavy lisp.
Do you think it's a Sylvester the Cat reference?
I think so, yes.
Suffering succotash. Like, it's gotta be. So yeah, he has a lisp. He's kind of hard to understand. There's a bit where Darkwing says to Launchpad, "Have you ever seen anything so darn cute?" Not to spoil the Joe Books version, but when Darkwing says that, James Silvani draws him in Launchpad with big anime expressions.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's real, giant anime eyes, big anime mouths. It's really, really funny. So yeah, Fluffy gets mad that they're basically belittling him and they're not taking him seriously. And so he goes into detail about his origin. What is Fluffy's origin?
So Fluffy was created in the science lab by Dr. Metal.
Right. That's what Dr. Metal should have told Darkwing about. Didn't get a chance to do it.
Yep, but he gave him hyper intelligence.
So he, as he's evil, of course, as all hyper intelligent animals are. And there's a whole bunch of cats show up and try to attack Darkwing. Who is this supposed to be, his gas gun or just a water pistol?
I think just a water pistol.
He doesn't really use his gas gun in this, does he?
No.
No. And the cats run out of the house. They all scram as fast as they can. Fluffy gets left behind, but doesn't notice the street sweeper coming up the road.
Nope.
So he gets defeated. He gets sucked right into the street sweeper.
Yep.
I feel kind of bad for him, the poor cat.
Yeah.
So how does this wrap up, Stan?
So Darkwing and Launchpad return Fluffy to Dr. Metal, who chastise him for creating an evil cat. And Dr. Metal supposes maybe he should stop the experimentation on the gorilla.
Ooh, I don't even want to know. So, yeah, of course, it ends with Fluffy and a cat carrier in jail.
Yep. Vowing to escape.
Yep, I shall soon be free, or I shall soon be free. And he does come back in part 2. What's part 2 called, Stan?
Cat in a hot tin suit.
So that will be the next episode. We are not going to rate Fluffy because this is only part 1 of his story. Doesn't make sense to rate him when we haven't talked enough about him yet. We got to see how his story plays out.
Yep.
And he does come back into Joe Books comics, but that got canceled before we found out what his master plan is, unfortunately. If we ever get more #Make Darkwing Comics, maybe we'll see more Fluffy and more Quackerjack and more Morgana and all the other loose ends that weren't cleared up before that comic got canceled.
And more Negaduck.
And more Negaduck. So again, #Make Darkwing Comics. Let's see if we can get this going. My fingers are crossed because it'd be nice to get more comics from, somebody else, but I'd like to get more comics from Aaron Sparrow and James Silvani because the story is not over.
Yeah.
So I hope that happens because I don't think Aaron Sparrow is ever going to tell you what his true plans were. He hopes he can continue with this too.
And most of us hope he can as well.
Yeah, I want to know where this goes. He has to undo everything from the Boom comics when Morgana disappeared. He's going to undo that stuff, and Quackerjack turned himself into a doll. All that stuff needs to be explained. I want to know what's going on with that. So,
yeah.
So anyway, join us next time for basically part 2 of the Fluffy Trilogy.
Hold on. We haven't
Uh-oh.
given this story our gas gun canisters yet.
Right. You see how rusty I am? It's been a little, even the last episode we didn't have gas gun canisters because it was a top 10. So it's been a while for me. So yes, so I'm going to let you rate this one first.
So I'm going to give it 3 canisters. You know, it's kind of a middle of the road story, you know, not overly good, but not terribly bad either.
Right. No, from all the Darkwing comics I've read, this definitely feels middle of the road. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give it the same score you gave it. I think what helps it is all those villains in the middle of the story. Definitely, it's a digression, but I like the digression.
Yeah.
Fluffy's fun. I like this is only part 1 of a longer story, which is cool. And once you get used to the art, it looks good too. I could do without the irises, but I just think it's really funny how so many of these Darkwing comics are just Darkwing and Launchpad. No, I know Goslin pops up in some of them, but it's funny how often it's just the 2 of them.
At least this time, Darkwing's treating Launchpad nicely. It's a nice break from some of the recent stuff I've seen.
Oh, like Canine Caper and Darkest Night when he was just so mean to him.
Yeah.
Like just randomly, like getting rid of him in Darkest Night. Like, no, I'm Darkwing Duck. You're just a lowly assistant. Be gone, Launchpad. Although I'm sure that book was written before the series was even like out.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, Thunderquacker, really?
Man, that had to have been a typo, or else the writer didn't know what he was writing. And then again, Taurus Bulba as the head of Fowl, that was pretty bad too.
And Darkwing's arch enemy.
Yeah, absolutely not. I'm sure Negaduck and Megavolt are pretty upset about that. And it could have easily been Steelbeak. I don't know why it wasn't. Anyway, these comics are just fascinating for that reason alone. You know, not all of them like gel with the show. A lot of them do their own thing, which is neat. I'll give it that. It still works. Like even some of the worst Darkwing comics are still readable. You know, I've read some bad like Rescue Ranger comics. Like Darkwing comics, even the weakest ones have something going for them. So anyway, so that's part 1 over with. We'll catch you next week with part 2. We are the St. Canard Files, a Darkwing Duck podcast. Let's see if I can do this. We are on Stitcher, Spotify, Google, iTunes, Facebook, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Pandora, and iHeartRadio. I think, and guys, if I had not said YouTube, definitely YouTube as well. I apologize that the next few episodes we won't have video to go with it, but that's Will's thing. He's got the premium Zoom account. I do not, so I would be unable to do one with video, but that's coming soon. And so, of course, you know, join our communities on Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, and Twitter. So we are on all social media platforms. We're out there. Will, do you have anything else you want to say to wrap up or to plug tonight?
You mean Stan?
Stan, I'm sorry. I guess I must really miss Will. I'm so sorry.
I think you do.
So anything you want to plug or say before we wrap up, Stan?
Well, I'd like to give a shout out to anybody who's ever written a Darkwing comic for Disney.
Yep, definitely. Thank you. It keeps the adventures going. It's more to do, more to read.
Yep.
So, until next time, everybody have a great night and stay dangerous.
Stay dangerous, everybody.
Or should I say, stay dangerous.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.